On March 14, 2024, Meghan was introducing a new lifestyle venture to millions of followers. Elegant visuals, carefully planned branding, and a launch designed to capture attention. Just 49 days later, on May 3, California regulators took action against a charity linked to the same household, restricting its ability to handle donations and financial activity. Two completely different stories unfolding within weeks of each other. Yet one detail connected them both. Harry's name appeared on the paperwork. His signature was attached to the documents, while questions surrounding millions intended to support wounded veterans continued to grow. Yet behind closed doors, concerns were already beginning to surface. Internal discussions were becoming more frequent. Questions were being asked that did not have clear answers. Some staff members started noticing delays in decisions that should have been straightforward. Small issues that once took days to resolve were now taking weeks. First, nobody thought much of it. Every organization experiences challenges. Every leadership team faces difficult periods. But what seemed like temporary problems slowly began to form a pattern. By February, that pattern had become harder to ignore. Several key employees who had spent years building the organization were no longer as confident as they once had been. Meetings that used to focus on future opportunities were now focused on managing risks. Instead of discussing expansion, teams were discussing uncertainty. Some people quietly began updating their resumes. Others started exploring opportunities elsewhere. None of this was public knowledge. Supporters continued seeing positive announcements online while a very different conversation was taking place internally. The gap between public perception and private reality was growing wider every week. What made the situation unusual was not the presence of problems. Problems exist in every institution. What made it unusual was the response. The warning signs were visible, yet meaningful action seemed slow to arrive. Reports were reviewed, recommendations were made, and concerns were raised repeatedly. However, decisions that required urgency often appeared stuck in an endless cycle of discussions. People who expected leadership to act decisively were becoming frustrated. The same questions kept returning, and the same answers kept failing to satisfy those asking them. Then came March. This was the month when outside observers began noticing inconsistencies that had previously gone unnoticed. Journalists started asking questions. Analysts began examining public records more closely. Former supporters who had once defended every criticism became less certain. They were not accusing anyone of wrongdoing. They simply wanted explanations. They wanted transparency. Most importantly, they wanted reassurance that the mission they believed in was still being protected. Instead, they encountered silence. Not complete silence, but the kind that often creates more suspicion than an outright refusal to comment. Silence has a unique effect on public trust. When people ask questions and receive clear answers, even difficult answers, confidence can survive. But when questions remain unanswered, imagination takes over. Rumors fill the empty space. Assumptions become accepted as facts. The longer uncertainty continues, the harder it becomes to rebuild confidence. That reality was becoming increasingly obvious as the weeks passed. At the center of all this stood a leader whose name appeared on nearly every major document connected to the organization. To the public, that name represented authority, responsibility, and accountability. Yet those who worked closely with the system understood that reality was far more complicated. Having your signature on a document does not always mean you control every decision behind it. Having your name attached to a project does not guarantee that every process is functioning correctly. Nevertheless, public opinion rarely makes such distinctions. When things go well, leaders receive credit. When things go badly, they receive blame. As scrutiny increased, another trend began attracting attention. While operational concerns were generating questions, public relations efforts remained remarkably consistent. New campaigns launched on schedule. Promotional materials appeared exactly when expected. Media appearances continued. From a branding perspective, everything looked efficient and well organized. This contrast created an uncomfortable perception. Critics began asking why external messaging seemed flawless while internal concerns remained unresolved. Supporters who had previously dismissed criticism as unfair started wondering the same thing. The situation became even more concerning when respected professionals began leaving. These were not inexperienced employees. They were individuals who had dedicated years of their careers to the organization. They understood its mission better than most outsiders ever could. Yet one after another, they quietly departed. Some offered polite statements about pursuing new opportunities. Others said almost nothing at all. Their silence generated nearly as much attention as their departures. People naturally wondered what could motivate experienced insiders to walk away during such a critical period. History shows that organizations often reveal their true condition through personnel changes. Financial statements matter. Public announcements matter. But the actions of people on the inside often tell a deeper story. Employees who believe in a mission usually stay through difficult times. They tolerate challenges because they trust the direction of the organization. When that trust weakens, departures tend to follow. Observers began noticing exactly that pattern to be why April confidence had become the central issue. The debate was no longer about specific reports or individual decisions. It was about trust itself. Could supporters continue believing in the promises they had been given? Could donors remain confident that resources were being used effectively? Could the leadership restore credibility before skepticism became permanent? These questions did not have simple answers. What made the story so compelling was that it was not really about money, regulations, or public relations. At its core, it was about expectations. People had invested their time, energy, and belief into a vision. They wanted that vision to succeed. They wanted to believe the mission remained larger than any individual. Yet every unanswered question made that belief slightly harder to maintain. And perhaps the most important detail was this. The people closest to the situation seemed to know something the public did not. Their actions suggested concern long before the wider world noticed anything unusual. They saw the warning signs first. They witnessed the internal debates. They understood the risks. The question is not whether those signs existed. The question is what they truly meant. Because sometimes the most important chapter of a story begins long before the public realizes there is a story at all. And in this case, that chapter was only just beginning. The turning point did not arrive with a dramatic announcement. There was no emergency press conference. No shocking headline appeared overnight. Instead, the turning point arrived quietly, hidden inside a series of small events that, on their own, seemed insignificant. Delayed report, an unanswered question, another staff departure, another promise to provide clarity at a later date. Each event looked manageable by itself. Together, they painted a very different picture. By the middle of the year, the organization found itself facing a challenge far greater than financial pressure or public criticism. It was facing a credibility problem. The people asking questions were no longer just critics. Some were longtime supporters. Some were former employees. Some were individuals who had defended the organization for years. When your strongest supporters begin asking the same questions as your harshest critics, leadership faces a serious problem. Internally, the atmosphere was changing. Employees who remained were carrying heavier workloads as experienced colleagues departed. Responsibilities that once belonged to entire teams were now being handled by fewer people. Deadlines became harder to meet. Communication became more complicated. Morale started to suffer. Nobody wanted to admit it publicly, but many employees were beginning to feel that they were spending more time managing uncertainty than pursuing the mission they originally joined to support. The most troubling aspect was that nobody seemed able to agree on what the real problem was. Some believed the organization had simply grown too quickly. Others argued that leadership had become distracted by activities unrelated to the original mission. A few suggested that the challenges were temporary and that patience would solve everything. Yet despite these different explanations, everyone agreed on one thing. Trust was eroding. Trust is difficult to measure, but its effects are impossible to ignore. When trust exists, people give organizations the benefit of the doubt. They assume mistakes are honest and temporary. When trust disappears, every mistake becomes evidence of something larger. Every delay becomes suspicious. Every unanswered question creates new concerns. That transformation was happening in real time. Outside observers continued searching for answers. Reporters requested information. Analysts reviewed available records. Independent experts attempted to understand why so many warning signs appeared to be emerging at once. Yet the more they looked, the more confusing the situation became. Some information suggested progress. Other information suggested decline. Public statements emphasized optimism. Internal developments suggested caution. The contradiction made it difficult to determine which version of reality was accurate. Meanwhile, those closest to the organization remained unusually quiet. Former staff members rarely spoke publicly. Former advisors avoided interviews. Individuals who had once been visible supporters suddenly preferred to remain in the background. Their silence became a story of its own. People began wondering whether confidentiality, loyalty, or something else entirely was keeping them from speaking openly. One former employee described the experience in a private conversation that later circulated among industry observers. The individual did not make accusations. Instead, they offered an observation. They said the organization no longer felt like the same place they had joined years earlier. According to them, the mission had not changed on paper. The values had not changed in official documents. Yet something about the culture felt different. Something about the priorities seemed to have shifted. That statement resonated because it reflected concerns many others privately shared. As scrutiny intensified, leadership attempted to reassure supporters. New statements emphasized commitment, transparency, and future improvements. Plans for restructuring were discussed. Strategies for growth were presented. On the surface, these efforts appeared reasonable. Yet many observers noticed a recurring pattern. The announcements focused heavily on the future while providing relatively little explanation about the past. People wanted to know not only where the organization was going, but how it had reached its current position. Questions continued accumulating. Why had experienced personnel left at such a critical moment? Why had warning signs gone unaddressed for so long? Why did concerns seem to emerge repeatedly despite assurances that corrective actions had been taken? Each unanswered question created another layer of uncertainty. Then came a realization that changed how many people viewed the entire situation. Perhaps the story was never about a single decision. Perhaps it was not about one report, one leader, or one controversy. Perhaps it was about a gradual shift that occurred over years rather than months. Organizations rarely encounter major crises overnight. More often, they experience small compromises that slowly accumulate. Postponed decision here. A neglected issue there. A growing disconnect between public messaging and internal reality. None of these developments appear catastrophic when they occur. The danger comes from repetition. Over time, minor problems become structural weaknesses. That possibility forced many observers to reconsider everything they thought they understood. Instead of searching for one defining mistake, they began examining broader patterns. They looked at timelines. They compared promises with outcomes. They studied personnel changes.